Hi, my name's Heather, and I have a confession. I did not get my mother a Mother's Day gift this year, and like most mothers, she very much deserves it. So in efforts to try to make it up to her, I have made her this super awesome wind chime, and today I'm going to show you how I did it. I built a 6-chime Corinthian bell wind chime that is set in the key of G. The four main parts of this chime are the support, which I designed to have a hide key, the chimes, the striker, which is in the shape of a star to ensure that each of the chimes are struck equally, creating a more pleasant sound, and the flag, which I casted with a resin from a metal piece that I found at a local thrift store. This is the original metal piece that I found. To make a mold from the part, I taped the back with duct tape to prevent the mold from going through the mesh center. I then used hot glue sticks and placed them in a parchment-lined pan slightly larger than the piece. I then placed the glue sticks in the oven and allowed them to melt at about 350 degrees Fahrenheit for approximately 10 minutes. Once they were fully melted, I removed them from the oven, placed the piece face down in the glue, and flipped it onto a plate. Removing the pan, I then formed the melted glue to the piece and allowed the mold to cool. Once cooled, I removed the part from the mold. I used a 2-part casting resin that I found at a local craft store. I wanted the final piece to have a slightly copper hue, so I also purchased some metallic powders and mixed them until I had my desired color. I then added that to the resin as well. Once the resin was fully mixed, I poured it into the mold and allowed it to cure for almost 72 hours. Once the piece had cured, I went to go to remove it from the mold. However, this is where I have to stop the tape and tell you, don't be like me. If you ever try to do anything like this, invest in some mold release. I did not invest in mold release and spent 40 minutes trying to patiently remove this from the mold. That being said, my persistence did pay off. This is what the piece looked like immediately after being taken out of the mold. For the chimes, I purchased a 10-foot long section of 3/4 inch copper pipe from a hardware store. After finding measurements online for the notes I needed with the type of pipe I had, I measured out and cut each chime using a pipe cutter, being sure to cut slightly larger to ensure that I could grind down the ends and tune each chime. Where you place the holes on a chime is very important, so be sure to look up calculations before drilling any holes. I wanted the chimes to have a bit of a matte finish, so I decided to sandblast each chime. This gave me a much more muted and slightly pinkish finish. Copper piping after being sandblasted tarnishes very quickly, so I coated each pipe with acrylic to keep the surface finish beautiful. For the support and the striker, I chose to use a piece of maple. Maple is hard, so it will hold up better outside and will create a much richer sound when striking the chimes. After doing some calculations, I drew out the dimensions on the piece, being sure to mark where each hole would need to be drilled for the chimes and the supports. I then used a bandsaw to cut out the rough shapes of each of the pieces and sanded them down to their final size. Using a piece of scrap from the same board and a rotary table on a mill, I created the top to the key hide. Holes were then drilled for all chimes and support lines. Because maple is so dense, it does not stain well, so instead I chose to burn the pieces with a small blowtorch. This created a nice charred look while also increasing the wood's water resistance. Finally, I coated each piece with an outdoor sealant to preserve it. With all of the pieces completed, I was able to begin assembling the chime. Wanting to use as few parts as possible, I used 1.5mm black nylon cord to tie all of the parts together. I assembled everything with adjustable knots, then reinforced them with permanent knots once everything was in the right place. For the striker, I made sure that it was placed just above the end of the shortest chime to ensure that every chime would be struck evenly. And finally, here is the key hide. And there you have it, one wind chime made with love. Thank you everyone for watching, and I hope you enjoyed the video.